my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious It has begun!
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear.
Time to misbehave.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News Movie Night, where we take a movie, we dissect it, we show why we love it, we show why we hate it, and in this case, we also show why Drak is way out of the times, because this is the first time he has seen a movie that literally came out in 1987. So I am your host, Adam Mickelson.
79, Adam.
Or is it 89?
79.
79. Okay. I knew I was getting the date wrong. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day or night when you're listening to this. And obviously, you guys can hear this. I'm being joined by Alex the ShadowBlazer. Alex, how are you this fine day?
I'm doing very well. Enjoying a nice, relaxing Sunday.
So, I already kind of let this slip, but today we're doing a unique thing because I occasionally get harassed about the fact that I am a child of the 80s. And there are certain films that I've never, ever seen. And in my defense, you guys don't know my mother. So at that point, there's a reason I haven't seen this stuff. So I actually think I might give these their own title, Alex. I really will. Where like I'll put in just like a Drak's first time or something like that, just so that people can harass me about it. You've never seen this film? Yes. Why? I blame my mom. And in this case, I actually blame my mom, my dad, and my older brother. Because this movie was outlawed in my house. We couldn't rent it. We couldn't watch it because it gave my dad and my older brother nightmares. That's why I've never seen this film up until literally 3 weeks ago when we watched it together. So at that point, yeah, we're talking Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien. This is the film that started it all. And really quick, because I completely forgot to have this ready to go, but I want to make sure that we read a little synopsis for it. I hope you're comfortable with that, Alex.
Sure.
And that is, in deep space, the crew of the commercial starship Nostromo is awakened from their cryosleep capsules halfway through their journey home to investigate a distress call from an alien vessel. The terror begins when the crew encounters a nest of eggs inside the alien ship. An organism from inside an egg leaps out and attaches itself to one of the crew, causing him to fall into a coma, and the rest of it falls into shit after that. It literally ends after falling into a coma. But there you go. So this is the 1979 Alien. Oh, actually, no, never mind. This one isn't even much better. So I have never seen this film until now. I am aware of what has come from this because Ridley Scott, I want to say this is one of two major legacies that he has had come in the same way, where like he directs the first film and then somebody else, namely James Cameron, ends up directing the next film, which skyrockets his popularity. Because this happened to not just Alien, but if I remember correctly, The Terminator is also Ridley Scott's.
No, James Cameron.
Oh, really? No.
Yep.
I have to double check this because I know Judgment Day is James Cameron's, but yeah.
Both the first and second Terminator are James Cameron. The subsequent sequels were by other people, though.
Let me see here. I just want to double check this because if I've got it wrong, then I've got it wrong. Oh, no, you're right. James Cameron. Okay. I've always thought that it was Ridley Scott who did this. I mean, Ridley has a few franchises to his name, doesn't he? Because he has Blade Runner.
Blade Runner is kind of the only real franchise and the only to his name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Alien is a franchise and he's still trying to, in the recent films,
Alien,
to expand on it, but
so Alien and Blade Runner, and Alien's kind of the only one he's really returned to.
Yeah,
because he's come back with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, obviously,
and whole new interpretations from what you and other people have told me. But Yeah, so we're here to talk Alien. So I guess the first thing that we actually need to get into is, Alex, when was the first time you watched Alien? And
Boy,
what was your take on it?
yeah, I don't remember exactly when.
You were a
Certainly,
kid, weren't you?
no,
It's
I
gonna
was
make
not
me
a
look
kid when I
so
saw
much
this
worse.
movie. I didn't see this movie till I was already into adulthood. I want to say early 20s, mid 20s. I know well into my adulthood.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly when. I'm pretty sure the first time I ever saw it was probably like a TV broadcast. Might have been during Halloween, might have been just any other time. And I want to say it was probably on AMC. So that was kind of my first real introduction to the Alien series.
Which then, is this what spurred you on to get the director's cut, which is actually what we watched it on?
Yeah, for sure. Because I watched the movie on, like I said, it was on TV. I'm very confident it was a TV airing, and I really liked the movie when I saw it on TV. I really liked it. Really fell in love with the movie. So definitely, that's what spurred me to get into the series a little more.
Interestingly, I mean, like it makes total sense because if I remember correctly, this kind of coined the sci-fi horror genre within it, where like originally horrors were just like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing. This was the one that actually said, "Yeah, we can put this in a futuristic atmosphere and scare the shit out of you."
Yeah, because I think the most popular horror film, like most recent anyway, there were obviously earlier ones, but like some of the more recent popular horror movies at the time Alien would have been made would have been Halloween, I think, which came out about the same year. Maybe, I think 78. I want to say it's 78. Halloween was. Then before that, you had movies like The Exorcist or The Omen, which were much more ghost movies, supernatural films. Paranormal possession kind of movies. So Alien is kind of like at that early dawn of the slasher movie, because this is still pre Friday the 13th by a year.
I was gonna say, yeah, because okay, so Friday the 13th came out after this.
Yes, 1980.
Okay,
so
because I was gonna say, like, there's a lot of tropes there.
yeah, and you could definitely see it's like it is kind of that cusp of the start of that era, right? This is still pre Friday the 13th, pre Nightmare on Elm Street, but right after Halloween, I'm pretty confident to say, and you could definitely get the sense it's also kind of got haunted house movie vibes, but on a spaceship.
But I also like the premise that they actually were able to do this because, like I said, we have Nightmare on Elm Street, we have Friday the 13th, which are based in very realistic kind of atmospheres where, you know, children's summer camp and just on a random neighborhood kind of thing. This was based in space. This was based in a sci-fi atmosphere that could be done, and they made it work. They were able to adhere to all of the horror tropes while making new ones in this sci-fi kind of atmosphere. And it's surprising to me that this is before even Friday the 13th, because Friday the 13th is kind of that quintessential slasher film that everybody thinks of.
Yeah, and in a way it's kind of a spiritual remake of Dan O'Bannon. Dan O'Bannon is the screenwriter of Alien. Kind of sort of a spiritual remake of an earlier film he did a few years prior called Dark Star, which was directed by John Carpenter. Has a lot of very similar. It's got a pretty similar premise. The Dark Star is a little more darkly comedic, where this was much more serious.
Okay. So with that, I mean, like, this film is genre defining in a lot of cases because you get this sci-fi horror aspect to it. I actually just barely learned this when doing homework for this podcast. Alien is the movie that coined the term jump scare. So like the first time that anybody uses the term jump scare, it came from this film. So like the first ever quintessential jump scare is this film. Which again blows my mind because again, if I'd literally put money on this, Alex, I literally would have said Friday the 13th happened before this. Because Friday the 13th, like, that is what I think of when I think of jump scares and when I think of like overly excessive gore and all that stuff. And so it's surprising to me to now learn that, Alien was before Friday the 13th. So the xenomorph predates Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Which just
Yep, it does.
good fucking lord. So let's get into some interesting facts here before we get into our opinions on it, because obviously people know my experience. I just barely watched the thing. I'm aware of the xenomorph, enough so that I coined my buddy Alex here as the xenomorph correspondent on my podcast. I'm well aware of it, but I'd never seen the films until now. And primarily, for those who don't know the story, my family environment was very protective of me. And because I was the little kid, and it turned out that I tended to be a little bit more sensitive than other kids when it came to things like horror. And so my mom like immediately went into super duper soccer mom mode and would not let this shit come in. If there was even like the slightest inclination that I might not take it well, she wasn't letting it in the house. Even though what's funny is like eventually I kind of evened out and I wasn't having those reactions anymore, if that makes sense. Like I was actually reacting well to what a lot of that is based off of is that you remember the scene in Last Crusade where they send the one guy into the first trial and his head gets cut off.
Right.
I didn't take that well. All right, because at that point I hadn't seen decapitation before, funniest thing. And I didn't take that very well. And that's what spurred my mom on into this will never enter our house ever again. And the other thing that also didn't help was my older brother and my dad saw it in the theater, and it scared them so bad that they had nightmares after it. So this is why I'm literally seeing this for the first time. Let's get into some interesting facts about this film. All right. So the first one, when Dan O'Bannon was drafting the screenplay that would become Alien, he had a more unusual title for it, Star Beast. He didn't like it, but struggled to find a better replacement until one late-night writing session as he was typing dialogue in which the crew members were discussing the alien. That word jumped out at him. He prompted to ditch the Star Beast title for Alien.
And it works.
It actually works a lot better than Star Beast. Like
Yeah.
you and I are both kind of creative types. We're like, yeah, it probably should have stayed as Alien.
Yeah. I think Star Beast is a pretty fun title, but I think that kind of invokes more of a
like as a
50s kind of
prototype.
B-movie.
Yeah, exactly. It like as a prototype title, it works.
Yeah.
But not like just think if this thing was actually out in theaters called Star Beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't have done that well.
Either kind of 50s B movie or like more Roger Corman stuff. So
yeah, like that Star Beast kind of makes me think of like The Thing from 50,000 Fathoms kind of thing.
Yeah.
So here's the second one. Star Wars actually helped Alien get made. Initially, Alien wasn't an easy sell. O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, who co-wrote the story but not the screenplay, bounced between producers for a while, almost landing a deal with B-movie legend Roger Corman, but the script eventually went to a new company, Brandywine Productions, which had ties to 20th Century Fox. The three founding members asked for all sorts of rewrites, but each new treatment O'Bannon and Shusett returned wasn't swaying the brass at Fox. Then Star Wars arrived and took over the box office. Every studio in town rushed to get anything remotely sci-fi into production, so Alien got the green light. And I'm aware of this because the original Star Wars basically is what shot sci-fi into the stratosphere in film.
Yeah, it really kind of brought it back from the dead, because even at the time when George Lucas was trying to get Star Wars made, everybody's like, no, sci-fi's a dead genre. It's a dead genre. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, because the way I know it is like Roddenberry had been pitching Star Trek movies for a long time before then, and Star Wars is ultimately, if you've heard the term Star Wars saved Star Trek, that's why. Because Roddenberry could not get a script for a Star Trek movie to be authorized until Star Wars happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that totally makes sense. So the third one we got is a Swiss surrealist painter designed the aliens. All the aliens in the movie, the facehugger, the chestburster, the humanoid, the xenomorph, all that stuff, space jockey, and the big bad adult were designed by the surrealist painter H.R. Giger. O'Bannon handpicked him for Alien. He had first met Giger in Paris while working on Alejandro Jodorowsky's failed Dune movie. Yeah, that one. That I've been encouraged to see a lot as well. He was struck by Giger's sinister images and even more so by his actual demeanor. As O'Bannon recalled in The Beast Within, The Making of Alien, Giger offered him opium immediately upon introduction. When O'Bannon asked the artist why he took opium, Giger replied, "I'm afraid of my visions." O'Bannon assured him that it was only his mind. "This is what I'm afraid of," Giger said. I did not know that about H.R. Giger, but you know what? Considering the stuff that he's designed over the years, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, it really does.
Because you could almost make the argument this movie would not have taken off the way it did if that alien looked like shit. And,
for sure.
And Giger is I don't even know if I'm saying it right, if it's Giger or Geiger, but just think about that if anybody other than H.R. Geiger had made the alien.
Yeah, I don't think it would have looked as good, and certainly not as memorable of a creature.
No, and consider, like, I didn't know this for a fact, but I had to think, like, he had to have been one twisted mother effer to make this design, and turns out, yeah, he was a twisted mother effer. So this actually helps me figure that out in my head. So the next one, Dutch Customs detained H.R. Geiger for his designs. Dutch customs officials once stopped H.R. Geiger because they thought his paintings were photographs and were deeply disturbed. But Geiger was just annoyed. "Where on earth did they think I could have photographed my subjects?" he responded. "In hell, perhaps?" I want to see an interview with H.R. Geiger. It's been a while since I've seen one. I want to see if this is holding true to me now. So here's the next fact. Ripley was originally written as a male character. So Ellen Ripley, O'Bannon and Shusett wrote the entire cast as men, but they left a note in the screenplay that the crew is unisex and all parts are interchangeable for men or women. I can see a hentai being made out of that. Shusett admits they never dreamed of the lead being a woman, though. The producers made that call, believing a female Ripley would be more unique, but also more palatable to their bankrollers. As Brandywine producer David Geiler remembered, looking it over, producer Walter Hill and I thought, here's this one character who's not too interesting, and this studio, I hate to say this, but for very cynical reasons, this studio is making Julia and Turning Point, and they really believe in the return of the woman's movie. We'd probably get a lot of points if we turned this character into a woman. I knew this actually, that Ripley was originally conceived as a male character, and that it was a huge deal to make her into a female character, but I didn't know the reasoning for it. But I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, Alex, like, you brought this up in the stream that we just barely did, and you're exactly right in saying this, because if not for Ellen Ripley, Samus Aran wouldn't exist.
Oh yeah.
Or Samus Aran would. I don't like to say like that absolute all or nothing kind of deal, but Samus might have been a very different thing, and it might not have been as popular if not for Ellen Ripley, because the primary inspiration for Metroid is Ridley Scott's Alien. So at that point, yeah, Metroid could have been a whole different franchise if things had gone differently. Nothing to add on that?
No, I think it's exactly true. It's
even Contra would have been way different. Although I have seen people, and I kind of agree with this. I think Predator's a little bit more of an inspiration, but yeah, the concept of Red Falcon is inspired by Alien. Mm-hmm. But if you think about like the concept of Contra, Predator has to be an inspiration, man, because it is just like everybody's seen that infamous moment where like, "Dylan, you son of a bitch," and they have the big arm handshake, and that's Contra to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I would actually dare say with Contra, it's both of them that inspire it. So we have that, and then the next one we have is Ash wasn't in the original script. So Ash, the secret android member played by Ian Holm, did not appear in O'Bannon's script. He was invented by the producers. While Shusett loved the addition, O'Bannon was less enthusiastic. He complained in the 2003 DVD commentary, "If it wasn't in there, what difference does it make? I mean, who gives a rat's ass, so somebody is a robot?" This is another thing that needed to be in this film, because that reveal is a big reveal in this film.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, in my opinion, kind of solidifies it into a much more believable sci-fi atmosphere kind of thing. because like, you know, we all want to believe like robots will eventually be part of the crews and we'll all be flying around in jetpacks and all that stuff. And Ian Holm just being a regular guy, I don't think it would have worked, honestly.
Yeah, and that as well. Plus, I think it kind of helps reinforce the whole kind of sinister corporation of Weyland-Yutani. Like,
Yeah.
they're priding the preservation of the alien above all else. The crew is expendable, and that's the primary objective for Holm.
The other part that helps with Holm's character is like, if you think about it, like the initial way you get introduced to him is he's like this colossal fuck up of a scientist kind of thing, because he's not following his protocol right and he's not paying attention, and like they're able to do a bunch of things that break the rules and he just is acting like an incompetent son of a bitch. But then when you add the element, he is against them in a way. Like he's this weird Weyland-Yutani sleeper who is working against them. The incompetence works a whole hell of a lot more. Just think if you took that away from it, he'd just be an incompetent fuck up.
Yeah, which is already a huge cliche in horror movies, is the incompetent ones.
Yeah, exactly. Like
idiot ball.
And at that point, I almost want to make the argument that would have destroyed Ian Holm's career. Because Ian Holm is, correct me if I'm wrong, he's known for this. This is his first major role. And I mean, now like we live in an era where he was Bilbo Baggins as well, but like this is what got him on the map. So at that point, if he was just the incompetent fuck up, his Hollywood career would look very different right now.
Yeah, I think he had a pretty lustrous theater career before this, so
he would have gone back to that. But
yeah, he probably would have just stuck to theater a lot more.
Yeah. So the next one is the ship's name comes from a Joseph Conrad novel. All the horror unfolds aboard a ship dubbed Nostromo. The name was ripped from the title of a 1904 novel by Joseph Conrad, which follows an Italian explorer sent to South America to plunder a silver mine. That's not the movie's only Conrad reference, though. The shuttle that Ripley uses to escape is called Narcissus, and that moniker refers to yet another Conrad novel, which is much more with a much more problematic title. Narcissus is also like Greek mythology, so at that point, that's interesting. So I was actually wondering where the term Nostromo came from, but it looks like it was just from a Conrad novel, not necessarily from mythology. So the next one we have is the cast members regularly passed out on set. So spacesuits, even fake ones, tend to get hot, especially when they don't let any air out. Add in set lighting and a summertime production schedule, and you have some truly sweltering conditions. And you know what, Alex? You and I know about sweltering conditions, do we know?
Yeah. And I think they're...
Now just put us in this office with spacesuits.
Oh, no, that'd be horrible.
Oh, good Lord. You'd probably die.
Yeah. And I think the year they filmed it, it was like one of the hottest summers in London, so it was excruciatingly bad for them.
Because that's how it works. It's like when you have like this groundbreaking film, that's when the groundbreaking weather starts happening.
It's true. It's just like the thing.
Because one of the things I was watching was I'm watching the appendices once again for the Lord of the Rings, and they were actually saying in the Fellowship when they were recording the Fellowship on the mountain before they decided to go to Moria, and they were having like record high temperatures that day in the soundstage. So
I can imagine.
It was killing them.
Yeah, and the 79, so that would have been the year they would have been filming Empire Strikes Back, and when they were doing that, they were shooting in Norway, and they had like one of the worst winters on record over there for when they were doing the Hoth shoots up in like Norway, I think it was.
Well, not only that, but like in Hoth as well as Lord of the Rings, they were using the fake snow, which is made by, I can't remember the exact compound of it, but it's got a lot of salt in it. And so at that point, not only do you have this blistering heat, but then that salt compound is drying you out. It's not a good combination, people, but you know, it's the things we do for creative desires, right?
Yeah.
But the costumes weren't actually updated until kids got involved. Wow. For a few perspective shots, Scott put his two sons in spacesuits. They also passed out, which finally forced the crew to modify the costumes. Oh my gosh, you had to have kids pass out? I lost a little bit of respect. I wouldn't have even put them in them, but that's me. So a 6'10" Nigerian student played the lead alien. So if I murder this, I am sorry, but Bolaji Bodejo wore the famous alien suit, and he didn't get the part through a traditional casting call. Bodejo was in a pub in London where he'd moved to study graphic arts. When a casting agent spotted him and immediately called Alien associate producer Ivor Powell, Powell and Scott had been struggling to find someone who fit the praying mantis aesthetic they wanted, but lengthy 6'10" Bodejo was just their guy. He took mind classes to get the alien motions down and sat on a custom swing in between takes. You know what? I believe that. There's a lot of mind that goes into that alien costume.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they had to get this guy, you know what? You needed to have a 6'10" guy. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't go taller than that, given that initial xenomorph look. Because they got to be fucking tall, man.
Yeah.
But this actually the mind stuff is even better because if I remember correctly, and you could clarify this, we'll probably say it too in the podcast that we do of it. In Aliens, they basically hired a dance troupe to do the scene where you see all the aliens converging on the military. So they basically hired like a ballet troupe or something like that to make them just that much more intimidating.
I think you might be right.
Yeah. We'll get into this fact when we get there, but the egg required hydraulics, hand shadows, and cow tripe. Most directors make their cameo via a walk-on bit, not shadow puppets. But Scott's big appearance in the movie comes when an alien facehugger appears to move inside its egg. As IO9 has noted, that was really just Scott flickering his gloved hands under the moving light. The egg also came outfitted with steel hydraulics along the top, and when it's all opened up, those are cow intestines, not alien parts nestled inside. Oh, God, I wish I hadn't had lunch. Oh, that's not something I wanted to know. Oh. But, I mean, that actually is kind of cool. Ridley Scott's... he's not in the film, but his shadow puppets certainly are.
That's great.
So, we have The Who's Roger Daltrey helped with the lighting. When the Nostromo crew disturbs the facehuggers, there's a beam of blue light, which indicates easy trouble. And you have The Who to thank for that. Lead singer Roger Daltrey was experimenting with lasers right next to the studio where Alien was shooting, and he graciously lent his equipment out to Scott.
That was nice of him.
Music and film go hand in hand, man.
Yep.
The actors were genuinely shocked by the chest burster. For the iconic scene where the chest burster shoots out of John Hurt's torso, Scott wanted the best possible reaction from his cast, so he deliberately kept details hidden from all the actors aside from Hurt. They knew a creature would emerge. They had seen the puppet, and they were more than a little suspicious of the raincoats they'd been given. But they had no idea what kind of gore was in store. Their reaction to the bloody burst is completely genuine. According to The Guardian, Yaphet Kotto, Parker, shut himself in his room right after the scene and wouldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
We just kind of know this, but I want to point this out. Like, a lot of people might look at this as like a dickish move, but what works best on film, Alex? A genuine reaction.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be like, Ridley Scott, that bastard. But that's how he got it. That's how he, like, dude, I've seen directors do the most horrible shit to actors. And ultimately it ended up being a good idea because the genuine reaction you got from, for example, when, because again, I'm watching the appendices for The Lord of the Rings. When you genuinely get that moment where Merry is drinking the blood bottle, and it's like it's the first time he's ever drank it, so you get his genuine reaction, and that just helps the scene. And so at that point, it's like, you know, I can understand the actor's point of view, but I'm with Ridley on this one because you wouldn't have gotten as good a reaction if it was rehearsed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
The chest burster was inspired by Dan O'Bannon's medical problems. Oh God, really? No real person has ever birthed an extraterrestrial through the chest, but Alien screenwriter understood this horrifying affair better than most. O'Bannon suffered from Crohn's disease. Oh, God damn it. He suffered from Crohn's disease, and it directly inspired the chest burster scene. He likened his digestion process to something bubbling inside, struggling to get out. Dan O'Bannon, fuck you. Just fuck you. I mean, you're right, but fuck you. Good Lord. No, he's right. And actually, I was kind of wondering with that scene if somebody had gone and done some like done some like gastric research or something like that to make that work, because I mean, look at all the jokes that have come out of that chest burster scene, and most of them are based around like heartburn.
Yeah.
You know, it just it totally works, but the fact that the guy had Crohn's disease, now I understand why it was so effed up to look at. Ash's innards were made from milk, caviar, pasta, and marbles. Oh God, I just barely ate lunch, guys. Remember that weird white goo that seeps out of Ash's android head when he's decapitated? Scott's crew made that from a combination of milk, caviar, pasta, and glass marbles. It was especially unfortunate for the Home, who hated milk. Really? He hates milk?
I guess so.
I didn't know that. A cocoon scene was, and this is the last fact here, so a cocoon scene was cut. The movie initially offered a much more concrete ending for Ripley's crewmates, Dallas and Brett. In a deleted scene, Ripley encounters them both as she's rushing to the shuttle. They've been wrapped in an alien cocoon, and only Dallas can make out any words. When it becomes clear to Ripley that they're beyond saving, she torches the entire cocoon. Almost everyone involved felt the scene drag down Ripley's escape, and since the original cut was well over 3 hours, it was left out of the final film, but I believe it was brought back in the director's cut, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And we saw that.
Yeah, so we saw the director's cut, and I actually like that scene. The fact that they cut it out, I mean, I get why they did it, but I think that adds something to Ripley's character too, because I know a lot of people might look at this as going, "You cold-hearted bastard," but to me, it was euthanization.
Yeah,
because they
were dead anyway.
They were pretty much dead anyway. Yeah, they were being fed off of. I think you could even see it in. I think it was Yaphet Kotto's character, where you could actually, like, if you look really hard, it looked like he had already been opened up. He'd already had an incision. So at that point, yeah, they were dead anyway. So you might as well have done that. And I actually, one of the things, as we can now get into this, is our likes and dislikes of the film is, I love the fact that they made the alien out to be like this ultimate apex predator. Like it was the ultimate hunter, the ultimate warrior, the ultimate, I mean, pardon the pun, the ultimate predator here. And it was so above all of them that they were just way out of their league. And I like the fact that they went out of their way to do that, because if not for that reputation, you wouldn't have had other movies to be able to go off of the impression of like, okay, this was just one on a ship. Now let's have you face off against an army kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things I liked about it. What are some of the things you liked from Alien, Alex?
I definitely can agree with that. It's the same with the adding of the acid blood, which I think O'Bannon also talked about. He's like, how do I make sure that they can't just pull out a gun and shoot it? Oh yeah, I'll give it acid blood. So just try to really find interesting, innovative ways to make the monster indestructible to an extent.
The thing that threw me off, though, is one of the things I've heard from a lot of people is that one of the things that makes the xenomorph just as deadly is that it will cut itself to get blood out so that it can start eating away at people. And this one didn't really do that. So maybe that's just an idea that came from later films.
Possibly. Certainly possible. Just extended lore possible, yeah.
Probably. But then again, now that when you think about it, like, this is a heavily armored thing. So how would it have gone out of its way to try and like cut open a wound so it could start spraying acid blood everywhere? Because every part of it, I think, was made to look armored. So yeah, I like maybe that's a later lore thing, because this was just like, this was a foot soldier, pure and simple. I hate to go with the Lord of the Rings premise here, but this is basically like an Uruk-hai, where the Uruk-hai are built like with only armor on the front because they will never run away. That's kind of the premise here, is that this thing is built to take a lot of abuse. And so at that point, it must be like basic infantry xenomorph.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with that. Another thing I do like about this is just the I know that this is a typical trope of horror, but the isolation really worked in this. Like, to introduce something like this into it really helped with that. And that's in a lot of cases what carries this film, and why it, in my opinion, it opened up the door to do sci-fi horror. Because then at that point, like, what is more dangerous than a ship that you are literally 100% relying upon for survival? And this thing is going out of its way to destroy it, which you could make the argument the alien is doing.
Yeah.
So I loved how they set up the atmosphere for a lot of the stuff. As you guys will hear in a next feature that we have, like, they went out of their way to make the ship quiet, to make it feel like, yeah, there's nothing here, until it's too late. And that, again, goes into the whole, this is an apex predator. It knows how to hunt you better than you know how to hunt it.
Yeah. I agree.
So another like that you have for it.
Definitely the atmosphere. Especially like you watch those opening shots, right? From the time it pans to from across outer space, you see big different kinds of planets. And you see the ship just silently moving through the space. Then you watch the camera kind of move through the empty corridors, and the only sounds are like the ship's mechanics and the computers buzzing on.
Yeah.
Then, of course, leading into the crew waking up from the cryo sleep. It's all such a really great intro.
Mm-hmm. Another like that I do have for this, and I talked to you about this quite a bit while we were on vacation, is the whole feeling of you are fucked over that would happen. Is like, the second that the crew thought that they might have an advantage, then something else would get thrown in as a monkey wrench, and it's just like, oh yeah, you guys are fucked even more all over again. And one of the things that also helps with this is the Weyland-Yutani aspect, that basically like, the company's not with you and they want you to die. Especially when you get the Eon Home reveal of like, the true mission of this was to bring the life form back. And it's just like, oh yeah, the company doesn't like you worth shit. And obviously James Cameron did more with this when he did Aliens, and James Cameron has the association with like evil corporations and stuff like that. But I mean, this is probably the best example that he's ever had to work with, I got to admit.
Yeah. This might very well be kind of because obviously evil corporations are also a pretty big staple of sci-fi, especially dystopian sci-fi. And this might very well be the kind of movie that sort of set that standard.
Well, the way that sci-fi kind of works, I think Bennett Sage put it the best, which is just like, you either have this ultra optimistic future, kind of like Star Trek, where everything's all right and everybody works together, or in the case of like Alien and other things like that, you have this ultra pessimistic, and that's where like the evil corporations come into play, is when it's this ultra pessimistic atmosphere. And a lot of people don't realize this, but I love Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, and I love the optimistic feel that comes from it. But a lot of the time, this is what works for what you're trying to do with like horror in a sci-fi horror film, is you have this ultra pessimistic outlook on everything, and especially in the case of Weyland-Yutani, because like, I get why people make the jokes of, yeah, this company hates you and wants you to die. And this is primarily one of the ways to be able to show it. Like, they literally treat their crew like shit, to the point where, oh yeah, we know you're a mining crew, but you're going to go and investigate something for us. And we know, by the way, you've been away from Earth for a while, and you're really happy to get home, but go investigate this shit for us.
Yeah, and that's another feeling that you get the sense of how grounded and kind of realistic and relatable these characters are, is that
Yep.
they're all just kind of blue collar workers trying to make a living.
They are,
Because
yeah.
yeah, because the first like several lines of dialogue are just about them discussing about how much are we going to get paid?
Mhm.
Why are we doing this when it's outside the scope of my job? Oh,
Well,
if you don't do this, well, you don't
especially,
get paid.
yeah, especially in regards to, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but the two that were working actually in the engineering sections of the ship, where
Yeah,
like
Brett
you're
and
doing,
Parker.
yeah, when you're doing like all the grunt work, and the first thing that they do is they go to the captain and say, how much are we going to get paid for this? Is this even going to be worth it for us to do it?
Hmm.
Because these guys want to go home, kind of thing. And I thought that was really appropriate because it not only set up an atmosphere of like, this is the future, but the future hasn't really changed. Where, you know, we're still having labor disputes. We're still having people that maybe are in position. Because the other thing I also like is there's a questioning of Ripley's position on the ship early on, from early on in the movie. And so you have like that one moment of like, oh, she's the asshole that just barely got brought in who has the Harvard degree that we all don't like. And so Ripley, in some cases, is viewed as an enemy, but in reality, she's like probably the one person that's on all of their sides.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that in the atmosphere that they set for it. Um, and one thing I also just have to hand things out is, you know, this movie primarily is about the alien, but I like the fact that you had other existing threats that existed within the movie as well, because you had the Ian Holm character. You had Ash, who was working against them but didn't even know it. You had the concept of Weyland Yutani as a company kind of looming over all of their heads, and then you had this apex predator alien who is looking to kill them all. So at
Yeah.
that point, it's just like you're fucked either way.
Hmm.
Um, so at that point, yeah. Any other optimistic stuff you want to point out?
I definitely, even though he might disagree, I love Jerry Goldsmith's score in this. I think it's great.
I
I
would
know he
disagree with
had
this.
his
I liked
problem.
it.
Yeah, I know Goldsmith had his problems with it, but all in all, it turned out a very good score. And I do need to kind of dive into the alternative score because that's another story in itself. That Scott and Goldsmith kind of butted heads a lot about the direction of the musical score, about how to do it. But it's as it is, it's really good. I think it's really good, and it definitely again helps sell on the atmosphere, sells on the tension and the mood.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest arguments between Scott and Goldsmith after doing homework on this was he wanted more tracks to be able to help describe to help describe areas a little bit more, and I would tend to be on Ridley Scott's side. I think in this term less was more in
Yeah,
that regard.
yeah, and I can definitely agree because, and we'll see the kind of the dichotomy of this when we get to Aliens eventually. But
Yeah.
it is because this one's more selling on the mood and the terror of it more than the thrills and action. So less was more, and the atmosphere was meant to carry the movie a little bit more.
Yeah. So we've been shouting this film's praises, Alex. Can we
Right.
actually think of anything it did badly?
Not really. I can't think of much
Um,
because I really love this movie, so it's hard for me to really nitpick it too badly.
I mean, one thing that comes to my mind ultimately is the chamber of the other alien was is weird when like I get the prospect of it because they revisited this in Prometheus and actually gave meaning to the chamber, but in this one if you didn't have that already, I can see why a lot of people have complaints with this being like what was the purpose of this, because you didn't even show like they open up the chamber that the other alien is in to see if maybe like a chest burster came out of him or something like that. So you didn't have that initial danger that could come out of it. So I can see the problem they have with it, where it does feel kind of unnecessary because all you needed to do was just put an egg in a cave and let them discover it. But I mean, obviously, I can't necessarily fault it because then they came back with Prometheus and explained it. So I
Hmm.
mean, if they'd left it that way, then I probably would have had a problem. But they don't really leave it hanging after Prometheus was made. Um, So I'd call that a nitpick, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a genuine problem. One problem I have with the crew is, why the fuck did you bring a cat? Because look, I get the cat ultimately did help them out in a weird way in this film, but considering what they were trying to do, it just doesn't make sense to me to bring a cat. Because the cat, like, this was supposed to be heavy duty mining work, and well, cats are very frail and can easily die to mining equipment. But no, they brought a cat along. I mean, am I the only one thinking that?
Never really gave it much thought.
I know what they brought the cat along is because they wanted to have some moments with the cat.
Yeah.
Cats are really great in horror films to be able to display danger. They're, in my opinion, they're a little bit better than dogs. Because dogs have to be guided into being afraid of something. Cats are initially just afraid. So I get from that perspective, but I'm just looking at the crew going, logically, why the fuck would you bring a cat? Unless maybe the captain had a significant tie to it, but I don't think it came out of his pod, did it?
No, we don't even see which pod the cat was in, and you're right. I can't really think why. Maybe the cat just kind of like stuck around. Maybe it's like superstition. Like they think the cat's good luck, and they'll so they keep it around. I don't know. Could be any reason.
Maybe it's basically the justification you're making is like he's a canary in the coal mine kind of thing.
Yeah, could be just like maybe. Maybe when the ship is in dry dock on like Earth or whatever, it keeps pests out and vermin out. So,
I will also say one thing that was kind of disappointing is when you see the sheer, like size and scope of the ship, Nostromo. I would have loved to have seen more of it. Whereas, and I get it, filming difficulties was like you had to prioritize. We have to see this area of the ship, this area of the ship, and etc. But it would have been great to be like, if he ever does like an extended cut, I would love to see more of the Nostromo, just to see like see the mining facilities within it and see how they're refining things. But no, they had to prioritize it. They had to keep it to living quarters, the bridge, the medical quarters, and weapons bay and self-destruct or science bay, ultimately.
Yeah.
So I get it. But yeah, those are really the only pessimist or the only bad things I can bring up with, because there really isn't problems with the cinematography in this film. There really isn't a problem with sound design or makeup design or anything like that in it, even though makeup design probably isn't utilized that much. I would guarantee you a good chunk of that budget was probably towards the alien. Not necessarily towards them, because the way I understand it, because of the weather conditions they were in, they were already generally pretty pale because of the working conditions. So they didn't really have to worry about that too much.
Yeah. And like makeup, the makeup's fine. That's kind of another fun story was like Sigourney Weaver was having kind of a reaction to the makeup to make her look like she's sweating a lot. But they thought they were starting to freak out. Like,
Sigourney, like John Rhys Davies, has a weird allergy to certain makeups.
Yeah, and they were freaking out, like, oh no, is she like allergic to the cat? Is she allergic to the cat? What are we gonna do? It's probably just easier to replace.
Was it the Weaver cat that she was having? I always heard it was like a heat allergy or something like that. That was, like, heat mixed with the makeup was what was doing it.
That is what was doing it, but but Sigourney Weaver in particular, she was like afraid that maybe she was like allergic to the cat, and then they're like, and so she's like thinking, oh no, they're just going to replace me because it's easier to do that than to find a cat I'm not allergic to. But no, it was just her having a reaction to the makeup, and so they managed to get that solved for her.
Yeah. So the other thing that I kind of want to get into, just not necessarily to pad out the podcast, but also to just kind of showcase to people who aren't maybe necessarily as knowledgeable as us in these things, what makes this a horror film? Like, what are the tropes that make it into a horror film, and how does it qualify? Kind of thing. So I figured you could kind of help me out with that in explaining it, Alex. So here are some basic common horror film tropes that you need to watch out for that are going to showcase that it's in that genre. All right. So does this film have a jump scare? Well,
yes.
It invented them. So at that, no, it has more than one. There's plenty of them. I'd argue. But I mean, this film invented the jump scare. So yes, it does have it. The abandoned place. Yes. Whether it be the abandoned ship or the abandoned planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
The vengeful spirit. What this basically means is like, do you have something that is actively stalking its prey? In like, do you have a predator that is stalking its prey, aka the cast? Yes, right? Because you have the alien. Technically, you also have Ash because he doesn't even know he's doing it, but he's doing it. So this is the one trope that's not there that is in other slasher films: death by sex. That didn't happen here.
No.
Although, I mean, I guess you can make a really weird argument for the chestburster scene, but I don't want to go there because that is an effed up way to look at sex. The final girl. So a lot of horror films end up with a female protagonist as being the only one that survives. And so does this fulfill it, Alex?
Yes.
Yes.
This definitely does.
Well, and technically, as somebody pointed out to me, the cat is also female. So technically, it ended with 2 girls.
Wow, I did not know that.
I funniest things you find out when you're researching this shit, right?
Yeah.
So
the cat's name is Jonesy, so I was assumed it was a male cat. So
no,
maybe it was just
apparently it was a female cat. So
interesting.
There you go. So technically 2 women, but we're gonna count Ripley on there. I will say in regards to this is another thing that I have an issue with, but not the film. Okay. Sigourney Weaver gained tons of prestige through this film, and respectively so. But one thing that does kind of bother me now, at least, is she's become like this big pro advocate for women standing up for women's rights in film. So like, for example, she was very vocal during the Harvey Weinstein lawsuit and everything like that. And one of the things she's been saying a lot of is don't allow the directors to put you into the skimpy outfits or anything like that just because they say for the sake of the film that it will work. Here's my problem. Bitch, that's exactly what happened to you in this film.
Yeah, but remember, this was like very early in Weaver's career here.
I totally get it, but I kind of wish that somebody would call her out on this. Like, do you not remember what you were wearing by the end of that film? Which, by the way, is actually coined a genre of, believe it or not, lingerie and women, which is what a lot of people like to call the military fatigues.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, one of the people that actually utilized it was the creator of Gundam, because he's had numerous women in military fatigues. For example, Kigali in Gundam Seed is in military fatigues. So yeah, it's a thing now, apparently. I didn't even know that. And it apparently is credited to Sigourney Weaver. She was a sex icon, and we didn't even know it.
Apparently.
She hasn't really done a whole lot of roles where she's objectified like that, has she? Because the only ones I know of that are really popular are the Ghostbusters films, which she's really not. Even in Ghostbusters 1, she's really not. And then Alien. And in my opinion, and this is gonna piss off a lot of people, that was fucking ugly underwear. I'm just gonna say it, okay? It, like, a lot of people said, "Oh yeah, it's super hot." No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. But this may just be me, and Alex can have this complaint with me. But like, anything that shows off like that much butt crack, I'm not immediately attracted. I'm more worried that you're gonna have an accident and it's gonna go everywhere.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's like my initial problem with it. It's just like, yeah, that's not sexy. But okay, that works for you. Besides, during that whole scene, and Alex can attest to this, I was laughing the whole time, because then they would turn back to the alien and I'd be like, "Hi." Just the entire time. Because he's just like sitting there in this really cramped up space. By the way, I would love to see an interview with the guy who was in the costume now, just when they put him in that really cramped space as a 6'10" dude. It's like, yeah, you just have to make that work. Because every time they would turn over, it's like, hey. Oh God. That was great. Also, I will claim a little bit of false advertising, because I was told that this is the film where the trope of we put one tiny hole in a window and the alien gets sucked out of it. I was told this was the film that they did it, and that's not what happens.
No, I think that sounds like one of the conceived deaths they had on plan for Lambert. Like that Lambert would get like pulled through a little hole, but they couldn't actually like
really?
make it work.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would not want to see a human go through that. Oh, you want to know what it might be? I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they did it in one of the later films, because I could have sworn it's been done.
Possible.
Where you see like an arm get sucked out like really hard by the vacuum of space. Yeah, that is effed up in a lot of cases, but there you go. So now that we've gone through these tropes, Alex, does it qualify as a horror film?
Well, for sure it does.
Yeah, it meets like 75. The way that I kind of treat it, guys, when going through this stuff is like, if it meets 75% of those qualities, then yes, it is. And there really was only one quality that didn't match in there. So yes, it is a horror film. Therefore, it can get whatever rating. But before we move into the ratings, we're also going to start up a whole new trend of the show, which is that we have clips from the film and we're going to react to them live. So without further ado, Alex, are you ready to start doing this? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So the first clip that we're going to do here, I actually reached out into the internet, into the interwebs, and picked out what a lot of people consider to be the best scenes of this film. Because like when you and I were talking about it, we were like, oh, we got to have this. But we couldn't really settle down on like solid ones that need to be in there. So I went to the interwebs, and the first one that we have, and obviously these are audio only so that we don't get the copyright and all that shit, but we're going to start things off with what is called the traumatized cat. This is not me calling it that. This is the internet calling it. So there you go. That is the traumatized cat, aka this is the first appearance of the alien, the fully grown alien.
Yeah.
And what a moment to unveil there. I know that other horror films and even other action films have kind of recreated this scene, but this is a golden scene to be seen. And the reason it's called the traumatized cat is because when you hear all that screaming and everything like that, you're literally shown the cat's reaction to everything that's happening. So yeah, what were the thoughts that were going through your head when you saw this initial introduction?
So you see enough horror films, I guess you can kind of like sort of say, okay, this dude's dead man walking here.
Yep, you're boned.
Right. Mm-hmm. And this is something I didn't notice the first time, but certainly on repeated watch throughs is like just out of focus, you can kind of make out the shape of the alien just kind of holding or hovering above him.
Yeah.
And, you know, that just totally sells it right there. It's such a great little shot. Like,
for me, it's the tail. That tail is the scariest thing about any alien, in my opinion, because like the way that tail is built, just to be, it's not even meant to be like a tail, like where animals use it, where it's like a rudder kind of thing for direction. This is intent to be only one thing, a weapon. And the fact that you see the tail curling around and then it drops down, that is gold right there, because like everybody in the theater is like, you are fucked. Just watching that. So that's scene number one. So the next one that people like to bring up is what they call move, get out of there. But this is the death of Captain Dallas, where unfortunately the alien finds him first. So without further ado, let's do this.
Am I Claire Lambert? I want to get the hell out of here.
Oh, God, it's moving right towards you. Move, get out of there. Don't you move. Down. Move down. Move down. Get out.
Oh, God. What's her name?
Lambert.
That's Lambert. Oh,
yeah.
God. This is like her best moment in the film. Where because she can see on the scanner, he's fucked unless he does something, but he can't see it. And so that sells it. The movie, get out of there. I know for a fact Star Trek tried to repeat, and it didn't really work out with Christopher Lloyd. Bless his soul. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, get out of there! Like, they tried to recreate it, didn't really work out so well, but oh god, this scene is very, like, it's difficult to watch if you're not a horror, like if you're not into horror, because you can, like, it's literally having that, the trope of, like, the black guy in the theater who's screaming, "You're boned! Move!" Because everybody's screaming that at this point.
Yeah.
The captain's dead at this point, and everybody knows it. Okay, so unfortunately, this is also considered one of the best scenes of the film, Alex, so you're going to have to relive this through audio, but this cutscene, or this clip, is solely known as the chest burster.
Oh, God!
I had to stop it at that. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Because that just sells the damn thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What was going through your head when you saw that scene for the first time?
Just how horrifying it is, and like how painful it must be to have that thing just ready to bust out of you.
They show it to be like really painful because you don't just see like a straight clean boom. You're seeing it like pumping through like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, I mean, we're talking about an alien infant. Can we call it an infant at that point?
Yeah, it's pretty much an infant.
An alien infant having to bust through ribs, tissue, muscle, fibers, everything like that to get out. And yeah, that's not going to take one shot. That's going to take like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
To make that work. And oh god, and I again, it sounds so mean. I don't feel bad for the actors because that had to happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, the actor initially had to know that that's how that was going to go, but then he was probably sworn to secrecy. Don't tell them.
Yeah.
So that we can get the genuine reaction out of it. And I think it actually helps the scene even more because they all are acting like he's having a fucking seizure. And trying to keep him down, and then you have that reaction. That was exactly the way that it needed to go. So the next one, this one I personally had to have in there because it is just effed up to listen to, and this clip is dubbed, quite appropriately so, Priority 1.
Bring back life form. Priority 1. All other priorities rescinded.
So this is the line from Ian Holm that has basically become a meme at this point, which is simply the bring back life form, Priority 1, all other orders rescinded. And unfortunately, because we're trying to keep these down to like 30-second clips, that way censors on the internet don't get mad at us, I wasn't able to add in the other person going, what about us? And Ian Holm looking over, or the Ian Holm head looking over and going, all other priorities rescinded.
Yeah, or I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
Yeah, or that additional, because I wanted to have that, the meme moment that everybody talks about, and in my opinion, makes Ian Holm's character in this film. Just having him with that disregard, saying that these people don't matter. What matters is the thing that's trying to kill them. That's a golden moment, and Ian Holm did a great job being able to properly display that. So the final clip that we have, and this is actually, a lot of people think about the struggle of getting into the spacesuit to kill the alien. The problem is that the whole premise of that film, or of that moment, is to be quiet. And so you can't really capture that in audio, right, Alex?
Right.
So it kind of loses that meaning. And since podcasts are audio format, I decided to instead get this one, which is the final log of the Nostromo being read by Sigourney Weaver. So without further ado, take it away, Sigourney.
The other members of the crew, Kane, Lambert, Parker, Brett, Ash, and Captain Dallas are dead. Cargo and ship destroyed. I should reach the frontier in about 6 weeks. With a little luck, the network will pick me up.
And unfortunately, again, this went over 30 seconds, so we really couldn't make the rest work, but it would have been great of like the final sign off of Ellen Ripley of the ship Nostromo signing off. But that is a very telling ending for this film. Because like she's getting ready to go into hypersleep, right? Because that's how they find her in the second film. From this. And so she's like wrapping up the final log of the Nostromo. She's kind of, you could kind of tell in that moment, she's coming to grips with everything she's seen and heard in these moments. And she's trying to put it all into a concise log entry that just explains this is what happened kind of thing. And to me, that way more than anything else in this film is masterfully done by Sigourney Weaver, because you know, she's trying, you could kind of tell in her performance, like she's trying to hold back tears. She's trying to hold back the trauma that she's gone through in this whole damn thing. And she can't, like, she's struggling to do it. But it's what a way to end that film, right? Like, this is the final assessment. We're all boned. Hopefully I get saved, but more than likely I'll die too. And that's ultimately like how most horror films end, is you have the uncertainty as to whether or not the people will be saved. And I know a lot of people will bring up like, well, then you also have those moments where they're very clearly saved. Yeah. And then look back at those films, how many of them literally end with like Jason Voorhees coming out of the work and going, oh yeah, you thought you were safe? Yeah, no. That's why that works. And so in my opinion, like that's the best performance delivery that Sigourney Weaver was able to give in this film. And it does exactly what it needs to do, which is just show like I'm the final survivor. I know everybody's dead. I somehow have to keep it together so that I can put myself in hypersleep and hope that I can make it home, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, like after this film was made, there was no guaranteed sequel. It was it.
Yeah.
They had to wait for James Cameron to come in and go, hey, I wouldn't mind doing this film. So that's a really great way. If this is a one-shot movie, that's a great way to end it.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately that worked out, but it's finally time to go into this, or actually really quick, I also want to give out, we're going to give out some awards to this film, if you don't mind, Alex.
Okay.
So in our honest opinion, I took like some of the biggest awards that get dealt out in the Oscars, and we're going to give our honest opinions as to whether or not, for example, I don't know off the top of my head what awards Alien has won, but should Ridley Scott have gained a Best Director award from this?
I think it's a solid film. I think it is certainly an excellent work for considering this would have only been about his second film ever. Before this, he had done the movie The Cavalier, and he'd mostly done commercials prior. So would I say this is a truly Oscar-winning directing performance? Probably not. It is great directing. It's great work, and certainly something you should be proud of. But I probably wouldn't go quite to that level.
The one thing that is going to sound kind of mean is one thing I can guarantee you, if this thing was going to get an Oscar, if this film was going to get an Oscar, this is actually one Oscar nominee or Oscar, what's the word I'm looking for? Category that should exist is when you're breaking ground kind of thing. And so in that case, yeah, Alien should totally get a breaking new ground kind of achievement there, but they don't have an award like that. So I would definitely do that. Would I give Ridley Scott that? I think even he's gone on the record saying that this isn't the best film the best work he's ever done. So at that point, I would agree with you. I don't know if I would give this back to director to Ridley Scott, because if he thinks that he could have done better, I can already tell you that he was bouncing, like you just said, he was bouncing from commercials into this. He hasn't gained enough experience to be able to have that magnum opus yet. So I don't know if I'd give it to him. So with that, the next one that I want to see is so Best Actress. Obviously, in this case, you'd probably have Sigourney Weaver nominated for it. But does she deserve to get Best Actress from this?
For this one, no. But for Aliens, which she did get nominated, and I think she won for that one. Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I would agree on that because this set the groundwork for this character, and the fact that we got additional movies out of it and more character development, that's my complaint. There's not enough character development for Ellen Ripley in this to justify an Oscar, but with other films, you could do a lot more character development kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, here is Ellen Ripley on paper in a film like this. She is just another member of the crew. Like, we don't really know her backstory. We don't know why she's there in the first place. We know some people hate her, but that's about it. And that's not enough to justify a Best Actress nomination or winning in that regard. And the same thing I would also say is for Best Actor, where I know a few people would want to like put in a nomination for Ian Holm or Tom Skerritt. I don't know if I would have done that. I might have done a Best Supporting Actor for John Hurt for the chestburster scene, but I don't know if I do anything else in that regard.
Right.
So, am I smoking crack here?
Probably I wouldn't go as far as even for John Hurt. Again, the performances are all great, but it's such an ensemble film that I wouldn't say like very much one performance stands out.
Exactly.
Again, especially in contrast to Aliens, and I double checked. She was nominated for Aliens, didn't win, but I can see why she would have been nominated for the sequel more so than this one.
Because then at that point they could actually flesh out the character. And
yeah,
to what I understand in
that.
Aliens, they did that.
Yeah, so, very much so.
So at that point, then the final one that we have to get into is, would we give Alien a Best Picture nomination?
No, probably not.
I probably wouldn't. Just because, like, yes, this is why I'm saying if there was a broke new territory kind of award in the Oscars, I'd give that to Alien, and I have no problem doing it because, like I just said, this movie invented the jump scare, the fact that it revolutionized sci-fi horror. There's reason to do it, but could I say that this is the best picture of 1979? I mean, like let's just Google search it, which one was the best picture of 79, and there's probably going to be a much better film being nominated for it. The Deer Hunter is the one that got it. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but I don't know if I would have given a nomination to Alien. In all honesty, I don't think the Academy would have given a nomination to Alien, would they?
It got 2 nominations, visual effects, which it won, and art direction, but did not win art direction.
But those make sense.
Yeah.
Because of what this film was doing.
Yeah, and the design of the film is stellar.
Yeah.
And certainly, as far as like where other awards, there are other awards that tend to be like more genre inclusive. Best like sci-fi, absolutely. Best horror, absolutely.
But not Best Picture.
No.
Not Best Picture. I would agree with that. So, final assessment here, Alex. Out of 5, or actually, we do this with films. We do out of 10. Out of 10, what would you give Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien?
This movie's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Okay. I'd give it a 9. And primarily it's just because it's also setting new ground for it. So there's not really a whole lot, like when you're breaking ground, you have to break tradition. And I know that would actually irritate a lot of people. And in order to break that ground, you got to break it hard. So they had to change some things on that, and that's why I would give it the 9, is because you have that going on. And again, there are elements that aren't being properly utilized in this film that get utilized later. So that's why I'd give it a 9 out of 10. To me, that's like a solid A as far as I'm concerned. So at that point, would you? This is kind of two-pronged, Alex. Would you recommend Alien to people? So go ahead and answer that.
If you like horror films and if you like sci-fi films, if you don't like either, then probably not.
Okay. I would recommend it, but on the premise that you kind of said. If you're a sci-fi fan, if you're a horror fan, it works perfectly. But here's the big one. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, Alex, Alien ends back up in theaters because of the way that the theater system works now. They're trying to get a bunch of older movies to be able to capitalize on that and get some ticket prices. Would you recommend, if Alien made its way into your local theater and you were considering going and seeing it with friends at current theater price, and we're talking prime time, so $15 a seat, would you recommend people going to see the original Alien?
Yes, but again, on the same conditions, and certainly for the diehard fans out there.
Yeah.
And funny thing is, it did get a re-release for its 40th anniversary, but I missed that. So
it did. Unfortunately, I think we missed the 40th anniversary, didn't we?
Yeah, we did just a couple years.
Because it would have been 2019. Yeah, I have no problem recommending it $15. I wouldn't do it that way, but that's primarily because I just like prime time is when I'm not seeing these kinds of films. Because I want to sleep that night. And so at that point, I would totally take people to go see this matinee. Would I take my kids? Probably not. If I took my kids, I think your parents would consider that actually child abuse.
Yeah, just might.
I think they would have, but I kind of expect that too. But like if I was taking a friend of mine that has never seen these films, and I could get in there for like $5 a seat, oh hell yeah. Hell yeah, because that would be a great afternoon to just go talk Alien and all the changes that happen within it, even though I don't know those yet. So that pretty much wraps things up. Alex, are you happy that we finally did this?
Very happy. Yep.
Especially since this opens a lot of doors for you, which means that we, because the other thing is like with this being Drak's first time, this question I want to answer for people. Would I go on to the next one? Yeah, I'd do it. And so at that point, Alex is already excited about that because he wants to show me aliens. So at that point, we'll probably be doing that very soon. And also, you've shown a very clear intention of showing me a little game that people might have heard of, I don't know, called Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
So we might have to do that. But really quick, because I know a few people have asked this, what about Alien Fireteam Elite? Because that's the most recent release.
That one I don't know about. I'd have to look into that one, I guess.
It is a shooter. So the way I understand it is that it's supposed to be like a kind of like how Resident Evil Reverse kind of works. It's supposed to be that kind of a shooter where it's like teamwork and all that stuff, but there's not necessarily plot to it. It's just kind of multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
So probably not.
Maybe not.
Yeah. And no, Colonial Marines is a solid no because, well, unfortunately, I do not feel like going out of my way to go find the fix for the code to make it all work.
Right.
I think we all can just decide that Aliens Colonial Marines can suck a big fat one and forever be known as a big mistake from one programmer.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Alex, if people want to reach out to you for any additional opinions that you might want to give for this, how do they do that?
Find me on YouTube, ShadowBlazer 3000. It's my channel, and I, of course, do anime content.
For myself, and I'm also going to say I also do have a little bit of a challenge for Alex, because now that I've seen Alien, well, I can't even make this challenge anymore because I've already gotten you into Metroid. So
yeah,
that's going to be a thing. But yeah, so now we can experience both of those. If people want to reach out to me, you could reach out on Twitter at GeekyNRO and be able to ask me questions about this film or any other films that we are also doing reviews for on the RSS feed. And more importantly, you guys can support the RSS feed, which is geekynro.libsyn.com, which is where everything is. So you guys can check out Geek News Anime Night, Geek News Movie Nights of previous ones, because the one that's coming out before this one was Wonder Woman 84, which me and my wife reviewed. And you guys might want to listen to Drak having a full-on aneurysm while reviewing Wonder Woman 84, so that might be enjoyable for you. The Geek News podcast is on there, as well as other things like Geek News Game Night. All of that is available there, and it will always be available there first. Sorry, all the YouTube people, but that's just the way it goes. And that'll go ahead and do it for us. Thank you so much, Alex, for both introducing me to this film as well as joining me for this review. Obviously, we'll be seeing a lot more of you, but until next time, for myself, for Alex, we will see you guys next time. Oh God, it's happening to me, Alex. It's happening to me. Oh, God.